Hello and welcome to another edition of Pulp Picks. My name is Patrick.
I'm Fritz.
And we are here to give you this week's reading recommendations for new comic book releases. And we're short a person, but we did get their review, so we'll do our best to give you Sarah's take this week as well. But why don't you start us off, Fritz?
So my pick this week is Scarlet Witch issue 5, kind of continuing where we left off in the previous issue with her having to fight Scythia, who's kind of like I would call her like a new 52 era Wonder Woman, that she her way of dealing with problems is hit first, ask questions never.
Mm-hmm.
And last time Wanda was able to take care of her fairly easily, but this time she shows up with this new set of armor made from magic impervious ore. So it goes a little more one side and the other direction this time. But you really kind of get to see Wanda's resolve and how it's just even when she's backed into a corner, how she's just nah, I'm not going down. And then also just kind of get a sense of even if she seems on the back foot, maybe don't think that she is. That's been one of my favorite things about this series is how much it digs into all the stuff that Wanda's had to deal with in her life and how she's just been able to learn and grow from that and be I don't be defined by the mistakes you've made or that people have made around you. You just have to learn and grow and just become a better person. And that's part of the whole fight is her trying to impart that message to Scythia, trying to teach her don't be wrapped up in the tradition that is basically forcing you to kill an innocent person here. And it's also Russell Darman. A lot of people probably know him from his time on Jason Aaron's Thor run with Jane Foster.
Yep.
This is his first and they heavily marketed it as this his first real interior work he's done for them in a couple years. He's mostly just been doing covers or character redesigns, and reading it you remember why he's such a popular artist, because man can draw a comic like nobody's business.
Yeah.
He's so good.
This has been a really good series so far. I've liked the way that it's gone. And yeah, it does feel like Wanda's kind of found her calm center or whatever to learn from, because she's definitely made mistakes over the years. For sure.
Yeah. But in typical Fritz fashion, though, I also love that there's a cliffhanger at the end that portends much worse things to come. Which, if you're wondering about that, check out the X-Men books, because it relates to that.
Oh, all right.
Also, Mortal X-Men also has a cliffhanger with bad things on the horizon.
Oh, man.
Fall of Krakoa is coming, or whatever the next thing is called.
Nothing bad ever happens to mutants in
No,
the Marvel,
nothing bad.
comic book universe, does it?
Nothing bad.
Never.
M-Day never happened.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Well, I went with what for me was a bit of a throwback. I went with group number 1, and I picked this one up because Dan Abnett was writing it. And Dan Abnett, along with Andy Lanning, wrote the Guardians of the Galaxy series that the movie characters were roughly based on.
Roughly, yeah.
And for me, that was coming out at a time when I was getting back into comic books. They also wrote the run on Nova, which really modernized that character and made him extremely popular.
For someone like you who's a huge Nova fan.
Yeah, I was already a Nova fan going into it, and they just handled both of those series really well. And I think a lot of the reason that the intergalactic Marvel stuff is so popular right now is because they really strengthened that wing.
Oh, yeah.
They did such an excellent job coming out of the initial Annihilation. And so I really wanted to give this a try, and I wasn't disappointed. The art in it was really fun. I'm not even going to try to say Damien's last name. I don't know how to pronounce it, so I'm not going to try to murder that here. But the art is really fun. The story moves along and feels very much like a classic Abnett and Lanning type story. And it actually has an interesting premise about Planet X and...
is it still just called Planet X?
It's called Planet X.
I love it.
And they make a reference it's so... it's so obscure that it doesn't even have a name. We just call it Planet X, and that's the Kree. So it's Mar-Vell early on in his career in the Kree, as a Kree science officer for the Kree military. And he comes across Groot as a child. And so it's, sometimes those fill in the gap. Hey, we didn't tell you this. You never knew this about Groot's past or Mar-Vell's past or whatever. They can be real hit or miss. But this one so far is I'm really enjoying it. And there's the teaser for the next issue brings up some more questions about other members of the original Guardians of the Galaxy. So we'll see where it goes. But it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
I know, like, the problem a lot of those kind of titles run into is the fact that because they're the in-between stories, there's not really too much you can really do with, like, a lot of, like, actual character growth or plot development because, like, it's point B in between points A and C, so you already know what point C is.
Yeah, you can't really, like, Mar-Vell obviously isn't going to die in this, right? Yeah, so there are some things that are off the table right away.
Yeah, so, like, with something like this, like, what you really, I feel like you got to do is you've got, in the case of something like this, where you've got these two characters who really have never interacted before, as far as I'm aware, like, the character dynamics playing off each other is where a lot of, like, the enjoyment, I would assume, comes from.
And that's where there's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And you can see some of those character traits in Mar-Vell that set him up to have the story that he then has on Earth, because he disagrees with some of the Kree takes on Earth, and so they've got some of that sprinkled in here. And Groot, you see other plant people. I don't remember exactly what his species is called, but other members of his society and him interacting with some of them. And there's a really cool opening to the whole thing that kind of tells you about what Planet X was like before Groot became the last survivor. So, yeah, really interesting. So, but anyway, on to Sarah's pick.
Speaking of Captain Marvels.
Yes.
The new Shazam #1 from DC.
I didn't think of that when I picked mine.
Oh, really? Yeah, I was thinking about it the whole time. But Shazam #1, newest ongoing from DC for the titular captain here, by the Dynamite team from World's Finest, Mark Waid and Dan Mora. Needless to say, off to a really good start.
Oh, it was so good.
Not a surprise by any means, but
no, I was really looking forward to this book.
This was one of those titles as soon as, because like they announced it like earlier last year, and then a couple months back they were just like, oh yeah, he's basically going to have like his original costume back. He's going to like, they're still not going to call him Captain Marvel because there's various legal whatnots around that, but like they're calling him the Captain, so like it very much feels like a return to like a more classic vibe for him, but at the same time, it doesn't like throw away all the like recent additions that people like his family and everything.
It did a really good job of blending them, I thought. And we've got mysterious antagonists. I'm not going to go so far as to call them villains, but they're showing up, shadowy figures. So we've got kind of a bit of a mystery as far as where the story's going. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It did a great job of kind of giving him that balance of he's a extremely powerful superhero and he's actually a kid.
Well, one of the things I really liked is how both the captain and Billy like have their own different like thought captions when they're themselves, and they kind of like I love with Billy's him explaining like, yeah, why would you want to turn back to a kid when you can be basically Magic Superman, and like there's stuff that, you can, like, do all this cool stuff when you're a superhero, but, like, you also just want to be a kid for a bit. Like, you don't want to, like, grow up too fast, which is part of, like, the, like, push and pull of the character.
Yeah, and Mark Waid just gets the core of a character. He does such a good job of understanding, like, okay, well, what are the motivations for this character? And just going back to the roots of them. And this is an excellent jumping on point. I feel like if your only exposure to Shazam Well, okay, so the captain now, we're gonna
Yeah,
call him, right?
which I love the explanation for why they started calling him that.
It was
'cause
a
it's
really
just-
good reasoning.
It's
yeah.
just people riffing on
And I
him. It's
wonder
great.
if they're going to extend that captain tie. You know,
They might.
They might.
They
This
might,
might be
but-
kind of where it's the germination of where they
Mhm.
end up with the name. But anyway, if you're familiar with the Shazam movies, this
Mhm.
is got enough of those elements
Mhm.
to have it make sense.
If you had read like the New 52 stuff or like the more recent Lazarus Planet stuff with him, like it's easy to pick up. But if you've literally never read any of that, if you're just like coming in cold, like it's honestly still like a really good
Yeah.
introduction to
Yeah.
him as a character and concept.
Yeah, and Dan Mora's art style just fits this so well.
Oh.
I really liked how on the blog they had old school, classic, golden age
Mhm.
Shazam imagery on the blog.
I also feel like, and not that like he's ever been like a slacker for this in his other books, but I feel like this one, he's really like pushing it more with like some of his facial expressions, like leaning into kind of the more like cartoony nature of some of the stuff. Because
Yeah.
like, as one might imagine with a character who's still like pretty young, like he gets into some like, not like childish, but like, I mean, space dinosaurs show up in this.
Yes.
Like it definitely like it does that like fine balance of like some like more cartoony things happen, but like there's still serious stakes. Like there's another cliffhanger in here that's just like, oh, something's very wrong.
Yes.
Like, got to figure that out.
Yeah, and there again, you know, the space dinosaurs, the way that he approaches the problem
Mhm.
that the space dinosaurs are having is very much superhero-esque.
Yeah.
The way that he celebrates afterwards is very, you know, childlike and
Yeah.
fun. So
Mhm.
yeah, it ends up being a really good balance. But I'm really impressed with where DC is going with a lot of these new titles with, you know, kind of their second tier, third tier characters.
Yeah, no, they like stuff with like this, Doom Patrol, a bunch of the other like new miniseries and stuff they've got coming out. I don't know, they finally seem to feel like they're finding, because they've been able to like do good with a lot of their like marquee characters for a while, but like been struggling with some of the more like B and C list characters,
Yeah.
and now it feels like they're really kind of like, oh, we know what we want to do with them.
Well, part of that I think was they just weren't investing into them, right?
Mhm.
So like their books kind of seemed like throwaway. But
Yeah.
when you put
Well, yeah, when you put Mark Waid and Dan Mora on this, like,
yeah, it's obviously it's got the feel of a marquee book,
Mhm.
which, you know, the captain deserves, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining us. That's going to do it this week. Did I startle you there?
No, just a little.
Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, all of that kind of stuff. We're on social media. We've got a website, and we've got a physical location here in Mankato. We're on South Front Street in downtown Mankato. Come check out the shop. We just got a ton of new wall books in. We've got lots of back issues and graphic novels. So if there are things that you want to get caught up on, say, you know, Shazam or Scarlet Witch or Groot type characters, we've got all that kind of stuff for you to check out, and we would love to see you. So thanks again, and we'll be back next week, hopefully with Sarah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. So thank you. Yes, we're recording.